If you recollect memories from other incarnation, like some other yogis have done, some other psychic have done, is it actually not really you? It's just that it's another dimension being coming in line with you?
Yeah, like it's not actually Benoit. It's not really like Ryan. Although my name Ryan does have a lot to do with my larger consciousness. Like Ra is the first part of Ryan, and then Ra is the first part of my last name too. So it's like that consciousness of Ra is embedded in that name. But this body is unique to this life. There is not another Benoit. There is only your awareness, which then incarnates as another name throughout these different incarnations.
What do you do in your daily practice? Because you seem to be quite close to the Indian philosophy.
It's a little bit different now than the last, few years. When I left my job in the music industry in like 2020, and then that's where I only devoted myself to my spiritual awareness. I had money to live, and so I said, I'm only devoting myself to my intuition every day. Like I'm not making plans, I'm waking up and I'm listening, and that's my practice.
You are talking a lot about these different civilizations like Sirius and Andromeda. Like for me, this is something I'm not familiar with, and maybe some of our audiences.
So every soul comes from the Andromeda galaxy. The Andromeda galaxy is like our mother galaxy essentially. And it's basically more than a galaxy, it's the core of a multiversal structure is what the Andromeda galaxy is. That's where the human soul originates. That's where the human time cycles originate. So that's in a really high dimension. That's higher than the 12th dimension.
Welcome to Sanskriti Radio, where we dive deep into yoga, meditation, spirituality, and conscious living. Today's episode is one that will challenge perceptions, expand consciousness, and invite you to look at reality through a completely new lens. Our guest today, Rayan Raelsbek, is a self-described cosmic warrior, seeker of truth, and a guide for those navigating the path of awakening. His life journey has been nothing short of extraordinary, marked by profound spiritual experiences, deep transformation, and an unwavering commitment to shining light on the hidden aspects of existence. Rayan speaks openly about his experiences with mind control, experiments, memory manipulation, and spiritual warfare. But beyond this, his message is one of empowerment, healing, and the infinite power of love. Through his insight, we'll explore higher states of consciousness, the role of vibrational healing, and how we can liberate ourselves from the limitation of conditioned reality. This conversation will be eye-opening, thought-provoking, and potentially life-changing. So wherever you are, take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us on this journey.
Just before we started, what came to my mind is this verse from the Bible. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the ruler, against the authorities, against the power of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil. Are we in a spiritual battle?
Yes. Yeah, we are. I call it more of kind of like a spiritual sickness. It's like we're dealing with a parasite in the consciousness, and so we're dealing with an injury, really. But then the perception of that is going to look like a battle, look like a war.
I was really happy when you accepted to do this podcast, because I found out about you maybe about 4 or 5 months ago when you were doing those psychic readings.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice because I could confirm my intuition on those known personalities.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly why I do it. That's exactly why I do it too. That was a big, a lot of it was like, well, it's finally ready for me to talk about this. Like I'm doing it and it's creating light on them. It's creating kind of timeline movement. But overall, the core of it is actually to help others identify what they're discerning, because it was such a confusing process for me moving through it when I would feel all of these things and then I wouldn't have anyone to talk about with it who was actually willing to like observe and make these kind of conclusions from a heart opening space. And so that really was the goal, was like, there are tons of people who feel this. Like I know that they do. And so that was the process of like, let's just kind of match intuitions. Let's resonate intuitions. And there are so many people that have that same type of response all the time.
Yeah, and this makes me think of, I feel I awakened more after 2020, probably like many beings. And I was just becoming aware of this darkness and dark forces. And sometimes it would almost get too much, like for a few months, and I realized how dark the world is. But now, as I explain it, as I understand it, is that first maybe you see the darkness, and sooner or later you start to see the light also. But often I see things, but I can't talk to anyone because they don't like to talk about it. Like you were saying, they don't want to see it because it's too dark. So I'm left kind of wanting to talk about it. I feel you are the same. You like to talk about these things. So it's nice to see you, even if you are on the other side of the world. And I can relate. But why are we awakened to this? And what is our goal if we see those things?
I think the goal is forgiveness. That's the core component we're trying to get to with all of this. And that's essentially what that battle and what that war is. That's tending to the injury, because the injury is that the presence of God has been removed from the state of the experience. And so if the goal is to recreate that presence of God and not create it, we're not conjuring it. It's already there. It's always there. And so it's reframing our perception to, once again, include the presence of the divine within every single thing that is experiencing, every single thing that's happening. So if we're finding this darkness and then not finding forgiveness, that isn't fully tending to the injury. That can continue to create conflict through the conflict rather than finding harmony through the conflict. And so that harmony is always full acceptance and full forgiveness. And that's essentially the Christ consciousness white blood cell that's compounding and like expanding itself, which then if you look at an actual kind of like model of an immune system tending to cancerous blood cells, it's one big white glob, and it like adds these white blood cells to it, and it just becomes one, and then it just rolls around and it rolls over the cancerous cells and dissolves it, and then it rolls over to the next one and it dissolves it. So I think that's the best example of like what is actually going on. We're rolling into this awareness of this darkness so we can then reckon with that acceptance and find forgiveness and eventually find gratitude, because gratitude is the true meaning of thank you or the true meaning of forgiveness is gratitude. If you can get to gratitude with forgiveness, then you've got it. You're completely locked in. And so those are the components that we're looking for to just help move the collective. And we always think we have to do all these big things and be of service, but it's like really just becoming aware of that and then bringing it into your heart and finding love. That's the entire process that we need.
Yeah, so awareness would dissolve it. Awareness with forgiveness. So we are supposed to forgive those beings that are, I don't know, doing evil actions on kids, and we're supposed to be forgiving.
Yeah, so I talk about forgiveness a lot. And also, I don't know if you've seen any of my personal history that I've posted on YouTube. I had suppressed memories come up from childhood. I experienced abuse, mind control experiments, pedophilia, all of that stuff. So I'm speaking from finding forgiveness within myself. And that's the only reason why I started speaking on it publicly, actually, because I was able to find that forgiveness. But it's because throughout the process, I wasn't looking at forgiveness as a way of like condoning their actions or saying like, oh yeah, it's okay that you did these things. Like in a way, yes, I have gratitude. I have complete gratitude for what I experienced because I chose to come into that experience. But forgiveness is also holding radical accountability. It's looking at the other person and saying, this is what you're doing. You are accountable to these actions, and I'm holding a state of forgiveness throughout this process. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have justice systems and we don't have systems and mechanisms in place to keep people safe when people are hurting people, when people are doing all of these things that we're seeing. But our justice system has taken on the identity of guilt rather than the concept of forgiveness and actual rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. So it's just, you're guilty. This is your identity. Figure it out in this basically like hellhole, energy consuming jail system that we have. And it just consumes people's energy. So it's not an actual dedication to really allowing people to live in forgiveness while they're finding ways to hold themselves more accountable. So they have to go hand in hand, because if you think you're forgiving and you're just kind of pushing it away and just kind of like la-di-da-di-da, everything's fine, like I forgive, then you're not really going to be able to find true forgiveness, because that's not really how it works.
Mm. Sometimes, because I teach yoga and meditation, so I come to those topics, and the way I see it is maybe forgiveness is also realizing that there is a certain part of you that's not been hurt, that cannot be hurt. Yes. And so forgiveness comes also from wisdom, because you realize that nothing has been damaged, and you cannot hurt anyone else also from that light. And what do you think? Yeah.
100%. And I think that's the basis of, like, you're hitting the core of why we're in this battle, why we're in this war, why we have this injury, is the victim mentality. The victim mentality itself is the core thing that pushes people into choosing all of those things, because they're part of them doesn't feel seen. Part of them doesn't feel seen by God. Things aren't going their way, so they need to control their life. And so that what you're saying, holding that aspect of wisdom, is the thing that actually allows us to get through this 100%.
So, can you tell us more about what happened, if you're comfortable with it?
Yeah.
Because when I read this on YouTube, I think you posted as a description. So you went through a phase of mind control and of memory manipulation. And can you tell us a little bit about this? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So
how much do you remember?
So it's still coming in phases. I've remembered a lot so far, because when the memories started to come in, I was already in a space of channeling, already tuning into my true self, to God, and viewing things in the Akashic records. So I was able to take this understanding and like go actually uncover the full memory. Now, in that, there have been like false screens of memory. It's been like layers of false things that were added into my mind. So I experienced this from basically the moment I was born, up through, the mind control didn't stop until I started dealing with the whole spiritual trauma, but the mind control experiments stopped when I was like 8 or 9. And so then after that, I was brought through some more programs. But the basis of this was that they took me from my biological parents, and they wanted to give me kind of like a handler. per se, someone who's going to grow up with me and know what's going on, but kind of keep me in line, keep the mind control experiments active, I guess, through her triggering through those different things. So I was brought to this handler, and I had a family growing up. It was a mother, father, and a brother. And so since I've uncovered that, I'm not actually biologically related to any of them. The handler was this woman who was a part of that whole kind of service to self team. And my biological father he was working for like CIA state. And that's why I was brought into that. My non-biological father, he was working for them.
Oh, okay.
And so um, uh, the QAnon movement, you know who QAnon is? Have you heard that movement?
Yeah.
So it's done by a specific group within the CIA called the Quarry. And they've been involved with a lot of other things, but they're involved with the Looking Glass project, like cloning operations, kind of like Stargate control, all of these things. They're really they have a lot of control around it. So they brought me into this family, and thankfully my brother and my non-biological father, they were not negative. They were positive, and they helped me throughout my entire life. They were very supportive and loving for me. And so the whole basis was to create an artificial connection between me and the handler, and create basically an artificial umbilical cord. So I would think that she's my biological mother. And so they ran me through, psychic experimentation. They would do things like, like keep me as a baby. And I won't go into all of the details. The details are on my YouTube channel in the Mind Control Memories video. I'll just give a short example so people kind of understand what, and it's not going to be super heavy, but it's like as a baby, they would not feed me throughout the day. And so it would go like hours upon hours of not receiving anything. And then they would have the handler come in with like bowls of brownie batter and bowls of like cake icing when I was like 6 months old, 7 months old. And she would come in, and because I was salivating and starving for food, she would then feed me this sugar-coated addictive food that was creating this crazy dopamine rush within my mind. And so throughout that, they have me hooked up to computers, running data, all of this. But really, it's creating an association between sugar, dopamine rush, and this person feeding me this substance. And so that then, and you can imagine then what they can do with the other types of things, in the abuse, the really deep abuse side of things. So they do that all to create these cords that then they can take advantage of, energetic cords that they can then take advantage of throughout my life. So then throughout my life, they'll try and push me in certain directions to get me to make certain choices to follow what they want for their agenda.
And now you've cut the cord with them. It's completely terminated, that relationship.
Yeah, well, so I confronted the handler. My non-biological father passed away when I was 10. So I basically just lived with that handler the whole time. And so she was the basis of forgiveness that I used throughout this process. I found this out, and I didn't confront her right away. I knew that I had to understand what was going on. And so I said, I'm not going to do this until I hold complete unconditional forgiveness for her. And so I went through this process of seeing where I didn't hold forgiveness, where I wanted vengeance, where I wanted revenge and justice and all of these things and power. And I had to bring that all back into my heart. And so since then, I've had a conversation with her, cut her out of my life. And she's now completely cut out of my life, 100%. And so along with that, I've cleared essentially all the cords, all the energetic cords, all of the direct influence that happened from these experiments. And like, for instance, there was a technological chip, a holographic implant chip, like a technology plant, put in the back of my head back here when I was really young. And so for the last like 2 months, I've been dissolving that. So I've been going through processes of finding where it's feeding me thoughts, where it's trying to activate emotions that aren't mine, and creating more distinction, more discernment. And eventually now that this thing has no power. It didn't have power over my will, but it was still at a point where they were manipulating kind of thoughts, like psychic attacks per se, sending people thoughts. And so now it's like it's dissolved. It's like I even am having symptoms with the side of my face and the back of my head, like physically, that shows that my body is like purging something. And so there's still all these layers that I'll still uncover, but at this point, I'm completely anchored into a non-karmic state with all of that.
Okay, getting more and more free. And
Yes.
Do you think that these experiences in your childhood were the reason why you developed those psychic abilities now, or you would have
I don't know
how much
about
do you play a role?
Yeah, I don't know about completely if it's that what's created it, but I think that helped catalyze it into kind of quicker development, maybe per se, or maybe it created it to be a little bit stronger. But it's really just the nature of the way that I live in throughout different lives and the ability that I hold as a soul to kind of anchor into that awareness. So in reality, I would have been hitting this psychic awareness no matter what. And so it's just been the process of utilizing that darkness per se for the catalyst to remember that that's what was happening. And that is why they wanted to experiment on me in the first place, because they know when babies are psychic, they can run tests. They know when certain souls are coming in through certain families, and they know when there's a really strong psychic awareness that's coming through the individual. So then they try and capitalize on that.
You are talking a lot about these different civilizations like Sirius, and Andromeda, and all. Like for me, this is something I'm not familiar with, and maybe some of our audiences. Like, is it? Are we all coming from a different planet also, or is it only for the all souls? Are those planets in these dimensions, or are they in different dimensions?
Yeah. So I love the questions. Love it.
Just basic.
So every soul comes from the Andromeda galaxy. The Andromeda galaxy is like our mother galaxy, essentially. And it's basically more than a galaxy. It's the core of a multiversal structure, is what the Andromeda galaxy is. That's where the human soul originates. That's where the human time cycles originate. So that's in a really high dimension. That's higher than the 12th dimension. So the Andromeda galaxy then births another structure, which becomes the Milky Way galaxy. That's a 12th dimensional structure, which holds Lyra at the top, and then Earth and Orion are towards the bottom. This Earth right now is at the third dimension. That's the sphere that it holds. So this is the ascension process, is us moving through those higher vibrations of Earths. And so we do all come from the same place, and what's happened is that groups incarnated into this lower vibrational galaxy, and then they started forgetting and started choosing service to self. They started choosing what some would label as evil acts and evil behavior. So that's what created this split and created more of a control over other souls' abilities to ascend positively. So that evil service to self-consciousness started enslaving different planets, different parallel Earths, which, yes, are at different dimensions. So there's an Earth in every dimension, 3 through basically 1 through 12. And at 3 is where the human form is able to start experiencing. So the human form doesn't go down to dimension 2 or dimension 1. That's just like rock and earth and light, essentially. So all of these parallel Earths there's essentially an infinite amount of parallel Earths within our galaxy. There's a whole kind of galactic structure that is all parallel Earths. And so it's like there are also plenty of other planets within this galactic structure, but many, many people, souls come from these parallel Earth timelines that exist in Lyra, in Sirius, in Orion, in Pleiades. And so that's where we have the same type of consciousness, the same type of cultures that are manifesting and experiencing themselves just in a parallel way. You know, it's like if you pay attention to the movie Dune or the story in general of Dune, that's depicting different religions and cultures that exist currently on this earth that are still karmic family lines that are fighting with each other. So then you think of Star Wars in the Pleiades. That's an exact depiction of certain types of cultures and religions that play out throughout the galaxy. And so we're getting like all of these different reflections of these different types of consciousnesses. And so there's this book called the Mahabharata, if you've heard of it. It's all about this cosmic war.
The war.
That's about a parallel Earth on Orion. So that's in the Orion constellation where a big war, a big battle happened. And so that is told through the perspective of the Indian line, of the Indian perspective. But actually, there are tons of other races involved within that war. There's an Aryan race, there's a reptilian race, there's like all of these different things that are involved in that. And so it's the same races and consciousnesses that then exist on this current Earth as well. And so that doesn't mean that all starseeds are only from parallel Earths, though. There are tons of starseeds that are from other universes, other planets, other star systems. But our Milky Way galaxy is really focused around the core of it being Gaia, and Gaia being this kind of core consciousness that exists as the center point for the entire galactic structure. So you could say there are many, many parallel Earths that are going on.
So is Gaia is the Earth?
So Gaia is the consciousness that manifests as the planetary body. Yeah. So she is this Earth and the third dimensional body, which we're basically in the fourth dimensional Earth at this point. But she exists all the way up to the 12th dimension, and then her consciousness exists in past the 12th dimension as well, just as a cloud of consciousness. And so the core of our galaxy is called the Grand Central Sun. It's the Sirius star system, and known in the Sanskrit language, it is Gayatri. And so Gayatri is literally the
Gayatri
tree.
mantra.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And so that's literally the tree, the DNA tree of Gaia that's extending out from the center point of the galaxy.
Wow, that's amazing. And where are you? Where do you come from? Do you know? Like, what is your? Because I think you mentioned you are 12-dimensional state consciousness. So you're coming from this is where you are right now. Here.
Yeah. So my core really comes from the Andromeda galaxy. And so because all of us come from the Andromeda galaxy, this is really about where the soul is at their current vibration. So like the identity that I hold within the Andromeda galaxy, there are tons of other souls that hold that same identity. They're just not further along in their process where they can hold that state of vibration. So really what I've done, like you exist in all dimensions simultaneously. You have a life in every single dimension currently. Everyone has a life in every single dimension across time and space. And so that vibrational awareness is starting to create relationships with those dimensions and with those incarnations. And so that 12th dimensional state of consciousness is when you go through the embodiment of the entire zodiac structure, because the zodiac is the 12 dimensions. And so that's where you're then able to hold this identity of the I am presence as being that default that then is coming down and creating all of these different other incarnations.
And if you recollect memories from other incarnation, like some other yogis have done, some other psychic have done, is it actually not really you? It's just that it's another dimension being coming in line with you, or is it because it's not actually us?
Yeah, like it's not actually Benoit. It's not really like Ryan. Although my name Ryan does have a lot to do with my larger consciousness. Like Ra is the first part of Ryan, and then Ra is the first part of my last name too. So it's like that consciousness of Ra is embedded in that name. But this body is unique to this life. There's not another incarnation that has this exact same body and this exact same experience. There's overlaps, there's corresponding events and corresponding experiences, but there is not another Benoit. There is only your awareness, which then incarnates as another name throughout these different incarnations.
So it's like the soul has different strings.
Exactly. It's the oversoul. So this is the oversoul perspective, because we think of soul as like, you are a soul, just this body, you have that soul, and then I am an individual soul. But that soul extends higher up into these other dimensions. So that oversoul awareness is you becoming that awareness and being able to look and see through all of the incarnations simultaneously.
Yeah, in Sanskrit they call this jiva, the individual soul. Jiva, yeah.
Okay.
Individual soul.
Okay.
But then there is the oversoul, the I am.
Yeah.
Which is it collective to everyone, or is there like an I am consciousness which is only for my dimensional reflection of me? Or I'm not sure.
So it's both, basically. It's like we all hold the I am oneness of just the core one. We are all that single soul, you could say, that then incarnates into, it pushes itself into many other souls. And so you are, you can think of it like a tunnel of light. It's like a kaleidoscope. And so like you are a specific tunnel. You're a specific kaleidoscope that is an angle that the entire I am oneness is looking through. So you are also turning, as is every other tunnel of kaleidoscope. So at every different moment, you're turning, and you might be holding same kind of positions. You're all kind of just spinning, turning. There's a specific angles, specific momentums that everyone's spinning at, but those kaleidoscopes within that spinning tunnel are completely unique at all times.
This reminds me of a quote from Saint Francois of Assisi, who said, "The place you are looking for is the place you are looking from." So all we need to do basically is to look behind and see who is watching.
Exactly. I love it. I just heard recently, same thing that's describing it is like, what you are looking for is the one who is looking. Yeah. Same exact thing that you're saying.
This is the goal of meditation.
Yep.
Is to find the one who is looking.
Yeah.
So, well, I will be interested, and I don't know if you can do it, but if you can do a quick reading on me to share with, I guess, everyone. I don't know if it's a good thing or not.
Like for sure.
Yeah.
I won't go into all your secrets. Don't worry.
Yes.
I won't spill the secrets. No, I'm joking. I don't intentionally go into things that are not ready to come up for me to speak out. So it's all aligned in the intention of your higher self, of what wants to come through now. Yeah. So when I first tuned into you, I went right to Sirius, right to the Sirius constellation. And I'm seeing this kind of family mix of kind of like this Aryan, like you think of Russian, Eastern European, French, Celtic. It's all kind of like an Aryan race, Scandinavian. It's all kind of coming from one Aryan race that then splits itself into the other, into the different family lines. And so I feel this connection for you to the Maharaji lines, which are Maharaji lines are specific indigo children lines that are coming through Sirius that have to do with indigenous wisdom. So that connection to Sanskrit that you have is through these experiences that you've had in Sirius, where you think of Ram Dass's guru Maharaji. He's a representative of these Maharaji lines, and so you have existed in kind of both of these different wisdom keepings. Like then you extend into kind of like the Celtic, the Norse, Scandinavian side of things. You kind of have this mix of both of those, but it's really a level of like this specifically Indian mythology and like Celtic Scandinavian mythology. And I think that's why the Mahabharata came up as well, because it feels like you were existing when that was going on and when that was happening. And so I feel like I see a lot of plants around you in Sirius, that there are like plants everywhere, and they're alive. They're like talking to you, they're moving around, and you like have this really unique relationship of like working with them and finding different like I guess extracts and different ways to like use them in their vibration for healing. But I see you're like surrounded by like a glowing garden of plants is what I see.
It's funny because here in France I have surrounded myself with the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of plants. And recently I've discovered that they actually see me.
Yes.
They're looking at us and they know me and they appreciate my attention, and they think I am their father in a way, just like animals would do also.
Mm-hmm.
And the connection to India, I've also married an Indian woman.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to India and I met her the second day I arrived, directly. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have 2 French and Indian kids.
Mm-hmm.
And although I live in France, we have a yoga center, but I feel like I live in India in a way, because everything is about that yogic philosophy. And so I think it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always like all that stuff is always right in front of us too. It's like like the things that we've connected with in other lives, like it's always coming through in this life in some way already. And so it's just a matter of kind of going into that.
And also the guru of Ramdas, I have been to his ashram. I have been to his ashram.
In India?
Yeah, in the mountains over there. I have been there.
Beautiful. I went to, he has an ashram in New Mexico, in Taos.
Wow.
I lived out in New Mexico for a little bit, and it's a Hanuman Maharaji ashram. Yes. So there's a really strong connection with Hanuman through all of that as well. Do you do mantras and like sing with the other energies and deities and whatnot?
Yes, I do mantras, and I'm just in a process of wanting to do kirtan more, to sing more. I want really because I was into music all this time, but it's like something that I want to do, but it's not coming through yet. But I feel this is the next chapter is I need to sing and to heal this part also. I feel I've had through my childhood things that affected this chakra. Like when I look at your videos and I see how well you express yourself, and sometimes in complicated topics. And for me, it was always kind of like something that blocks me from expressing myself fully from my mind to my voice. So I feel singing and chanting Om also. I do a lot of Om. Would be healing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like with our language, like the English language specifically, like it's been so messed with as well that when we're trying to take these concepts into the English language, especially when it's not your first language, that's going to create so much like back and forth distortion just naturally in your mind. And so like you're so used to singing in these other lives, like you like the plants want you to sing to them. You like the language that we all had in these other lives was a form of singing, really, and like vibrational kind of toning. And so that's my biggest advice for every single person who wants to be on the spiritual path is sing mantras out loud with your voice. And that's all you need to do.
So it would be interesting for you to share now. What do you do in your daily practice? Because you seem to be quite close to the Indian philosophy. Like, what is your like day-to-day life look like in your practice?
So it's a little bit different now than the last, few years. When I left my job in the music industry in like 2022 or 2020 actually, and then that's where I only devoted myself to my spiritual awareness. I had money to live, and so I said, I'm only devoting myself to my intuition every day. Like I'm not making plans. I'm waking up and I'm listening, and that's my practice. And so that was 3 years of my life, and that would take me to, different books that I needed, meditations. It's really like I kind of have this toolbox, and then I go to them when I need to go to them. But that also includes, like artwork. I draw, I make jewelry, I write stories, I write screenplays and books. And so the core components of meditation, mantra, journaling, those were basically that was my routine. So I would do those every day. But then I would just let my intuition take me to where I needed to go. And so I was in a kind of a constructing phase. I was wanting to create like organization in the way that I understood things. So I was really just wanting to collect wisdom and just to remember the kind of the blueprint that I was here with. And so I would be, I had a lot of books at one point. I would be reading 6-7 books at one time. And it was just an intuitive basis. It was like, oh, I'm reading this book today, and then this part that I read helps me connect this aspect of this kind of chart. And then I would make charts and tables on Google, and it was like, I didn't know what was going to happen with these things. I was literally just listening to my intuition so I could understand what I was receiving and what was going on. And so just sticking with that, with the meditation, with the mantra, and just listening to the intuition, and working in, healing, like trauma healing throughout that. I was with the journaling, and really with all of this, I was bringing my shadow into it every day. It was, what do I need to release? What do I need to become aware of? What is blocking me? What is keeping me in a state of limited identity? And so I was just so willing to face the truth of how I was acting and what was going on within my mind, that it was just this rapid, like fast-paced shedding of just synchronicities. And so it was just the complete dedication to trauma. And there was a lot of external receiving of information at that point. And then I had the memories come up, and I kind of dropped more into an internal space. I started becoming really psychic. I started being able to just get and receive information that normally I would have had to read a book for to connect a dot. I could just start receiving that information, and the puzzle pieces would fit together. So I eventually just dropped into, again, just listening to my intuition. I don't really read books anymore. I am just in an intuitive state. I'll meditate when I need to, but I don't have a specific routine where it's like I wake up and then I do this and then I do this and then I do this. The only thing that I do every night is I sing a mantra out loud before I go to sleep. In bed, right before I'm going to sleep, I'll sing a mantra out loud. And that's the last thing I do before I go to sleep. So then I'll be able to do dream work with that, and I'll, dream recollection. That was a whole part of the process as well. And so now I've worked those muscles out so often that I can recall dreams, I can interpret them without having to do this kind of external process. And so I'm just now in this state of flow. And so whatever I need to do, I just kind of listen to it. But it's still the core: meditation, mantra, and tending to my shadow. That's what it is.
Yeah. So it seems that for you, it went really, really fast. Like you were saying, no, a lot of knowledge was coming. To me, when you were talking, it felt like because you were not in a victim state, you were not blaming anyone for your misery, you were blaming yourself. So you're trying to liberate yourself here. All your attention was on yourself. Whereas other people might have said, yeah, but this person has done this to me and this person has done this. And you were completely clear from all this because you knew it was only in your own hands.
Yeah.
So I was always like this throughout my life. I feel not blaming anyone. But this could be interesting now to give some advice to other people. Like for those of our listeners who are experiencing their own darkness, what practices or mindset could they use that you would recommend to, tune into their light? What could they do also?
Self-love. That's the basis of all of it. And it's like, one of the things that helped me the most was standing in front of a mirror, looking at myself in the eyes and saying out loud, I love you. I accept you. I forgive you. And no matter what is happening, I love you. And God loves you. And even if that was hard to grapple with, that there was this infinite unconditional love that was available for me, I still had faith in it. I still said, this feels true. I know this is right. And so this is how I'm going to be modeling my life. And I always had a lot of love. I was always really positive throughout my life anyways. But so it's just bringing it back to the basics, bringing it back to self-love. And like you're saying, like, sometimes when you're going through darkness, if you're trying to fix it, or it just can become a lot. Like, it kind of pulls you into these stages where you want to fix it and you want it to be gone, but you're in this sticky kind of quicksand. And the more you try and work on it, then the more it just feels stuck on you. And so it's like, the idea is to be able to get to a state of trusting yourself no matter what. And that means trusting your reassurance to yourself when you're going through these challenging times. Because when you choose trust in God, trust in yourself, you're going to be challenged. That trust is going to be challenged. You're going to be faced with things that give you the choice to not choose trust anymore. You're going to be faced with things that give you the option to say, nope, God is not a part of my life anymore. I'm doing this. I'm doing the control thing.
So you are tested.
Yeah.
Tested in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're doing for ourselves. And we're orchestrating these things from our higher self. So I think also within that trust is I wouldn't be experiencing something if I couldn't handle it. Whatever I'm experiencing, I can handle. And it just takes me to recognize and trust in myself and believe in myself that I can handle what's being given to me.
Yeah, and this reminds me of, to be paranoiac, in a state of paranoia.
Pranaya. Yeah, pranaya.
Yeah. So people believe that the whole world is against them. But then there is the opposite of this, where you believe the whole world, the whole universe is conspiring to help you, and to guide you. And everything that is happening is actually for your own good.
That's it. That's the core. and I always say that too. It's like, the one thing that changes your life is realizing that everything's happening for you. Because that's where the victim mentality starts to be removed, or it starts to be recognized, per se. Because it takes us a while to remove the victim mentality sometimes. Sometimes it's different for everyone. But so that core perspective is hands down the most important thing that you can hold for yourself throughout this process.
Wow, that's really amazing. And you say also there's nothing that can stop the power of your love. That's a big statement. So
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has this power.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's the highest power, or like, how do we cultivate it? How do we access it?
Just you start by the basics of the very basics, standing in front of the mirror, telling yourself that you love you, that you accept every single thing that you've done in your life, that you forgive every single thing that you've done in your life, because those are the core components to love. We think of love as being conditional. Love is unconditional. Relationships are not. And so you have to be able to hold your sense of value, your sense of boundaries, and your sense of standard within relationships, because you hold a standard for yourself around self-compassion, around not allowing yourself to be walked on, because that's when you've stopped walking all over yourself, is eventually when you then stop allowing others to do that. And so that love is the entranceway to the infinite love that is God. And essentially, that infinite love is always anchored down into those two core components: acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. The three components, actually, because gratitude is what creates the final connecting of feeling joy. If you've accepted what you've experienced and you accept everything you're going to experience, now that doesn't mean that when something happens, you're going to just go through it easy. You're still going to have to remind yourself, oh shit, I accept this. I accept this. I accept it. But so that's that entranceway. And, the power aspect is where all of the psychic stuff, all of the extra dimensional awareness, all of the, you hear people eventually levitating, cities and the powers of things that we hear of, that is all orchestrated through love, through the organic aspect of love. And so if you're willing to relentlessly love yourself, then you're going to see everyone else as a reflection of you, as an emanation of you, and you as an emanation of them. And it's just anchoring in, because that's the foundation of everything. That's what we stand on. And because we've kind of broken that foundation away, then we're trying to do all of these things without coming back down into that ground level, which is just pure love. That's it. That's where everything grows from.
It reminds me also of this channel in the US where this person is I think it's in New York happening, but he goes to see some homeless person, and he says, if you can answer one question, I will give you $500 to those homeless persons. And the person looks up, and you can see the face, with a lot of years of drugs and sleeping outside. And the person said, I don't believe you. He said, yes, if you answer one question, I give you $500. And he said, okay, go on, ask me. And he says, what is your biggest regret in life? And the person looks, and it doesn't even take him 5 seconds to think about his biggest regret. It's instant. He knows directly what it is.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, it's that time when I cheated on my wife and I lost my son. Somebody else says, oh, it's because of me, my best friend is dead. And then suddenly you look at those people and you see that the reason why they are in this situation is because of guilt. They are auto-sabotaging their life because of guilt, when they could have actually said, okay, I messed up, but now I'm going to be good. The very next day, they could have said that. Instead, there's that negative, dark energy of guilt. So I guess self-acceptance and love is kind of like the antidote.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you feel guilty about yourself like that, that means you think you deserve that type of life, that you deserve to live on the streets. You deserve to not feel love. You deserve to not have those that care about you, because you're in such a state of guilt that even if you're consciously thinking that you want it, that you miss it, that subconscious has formed its narratives. And that doesn't mean that you can't fix those. Like you're saying, you can always reform the subconscious narratives, but that subconscious narrative is then what creates time. It's what creates our experience of space. So it's going to pull us into the experiences that we're saying we deserve.
Yeah, that's really sad to see. But so afterwards, he gives them those $500, and after a few months, sometimes a few years, he goes back to see those person, and usually they found a job. They still carry that little wisdom paper that the person gave him. So it means there is something spiritual happening also in that moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Very interesting.
That's beautiful too. It's around money specifically too, because like some people think, it's like money doesn't solve happiness, all that stuff. It's like, no, not necessarily directly, but if it's paired with something like that, paired with someone being seen, someone being heard, then yeah, it's gonna make a difference.
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic also, money, because I feel in all our subconscious is put this idea that money is bad, and money is a root of all evil. And I had to work on this also, because I remember my father had money, but he had a bad relationship with it because he didn't want to show it. And I respected him for it because, for example, he would buy a very cheap car to not be seen. And but in the end, he lost his money by not respecting it. And me also, I could say things like, I don't like nice cars. I'm not interested in nice cars. Yeah. But it's like a bad mantra to repeat because in the end, I didn't have a nice car. Yeah. And now, also in the spiritual world, there's this idea that if you are spiritual, you should not have money. But now I'm in a completely different frame of thoughts. And I believe that if you want to do good things, if you have money, you can do much greater things. You can help more kids, you can help more animals, you can help your family, your community. So I have worked against this belief, this wrong belief, actually, that money is bad. Actually, money is good when I trust myself and when I'm fully myself.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Many people have these wrong ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a mind control narrative. That is something that these controlling families, the ones who want to control everything and enslave, they put that perspective into the spiritual community so that people then hook onto it and keep themselves in a state of poverty. Now, some people in the spiritual path are going to choose to go down the path of money celibacy. I don't know if that's the right word. Is it called like recidivance? Is that the right word? Like you're kind of
the ascetic life.
Yeah, the ascetic life, and it's like or the what life? What's the word?
The ascetic, like you become an ascetic. But this is okay if people had money previously, and then they're like, okay, now I don't want it anymore. But some people don't have it, and
yeah, definitely. And I think that like it's not like people all need $100,000 a year, right? It's like some people might create an environment for themselves that's they're good off like $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year, because they found this thing where they feel fulfilled, they feel happy there, and so that's what it's about. But yes, in terms of people who want to create a lot of money in their life, that's why, so we can then utilize it in order to help expand the experience of oneness and the experience of God. And eventually, New Earth further down the line is going to be operating off of no money. It's going to be operating off of a complete infinite abundance system where there's just energetic exchange that doesn't have this trade and barter type of thing. And unfortunately, the profit model is, along with the victim mentality, is one of the core components that creates a lessening of devotion to God. Because if your life is modeled off of profit, then rather than God first and wanting to receive money, bringing it in, but if profit is the first priority, then that means that God isn't the first priority. And profit is attempting to, it's this whole distorted view of trying to create value based off of this understanding of scarcity and needing more. So if when a business is only focused on profit first, and this doesn't mean that profit is bad or that businesses shouldn't want to receive profit or people shouldn't want to create a positive within their spending, etc. But when the energetic structure is profit first, you're creating a lower vibration within that energetic structure because of all of the things that have why that profit model is brought in the first place, because it's created to negate what the true needs of life are and create this sense of chasing money. So then you have people who hold this idea that, well, if I'm spiritual, I don't need money. Well, then that's going to put all the profit into the people who want all the money. So it's this whole game of wanting people to chase this carrot of this idea of profit, and then seeing people who have a ton of money and creating this glamorized effect of what that means for attention and for validation. So then you have people who want profit just to get attention, just to get validation. So it becomes this whole kind of lure that is kind of cast into this pool or this school of fish to try and pull people out of this state of just being surrendered into God. Because also, if you're trusting in abundance, then you're going to trust that you're going to have the right amount of money at the right time, in the right timing. It's all of that. I spent all the money that I had after I went through that phase of I have money to live, I'm investing in myself. I went all the way down to $0 and I didn't go and look for a job. And it was just intuition. And then I had to borrow money from my brother, borrow money from some family members. And throughout this process, I was getting pressure of like, why aren't you going to get a job? Like, why are you not doing the thing that you're supposed to do? And I would think about it. I would sit with it. And the intuition would be like, no, don't go get a job. If someone's willing to lend you money and you're going to pay them back, like, roll with it, roll with this intuition. And then eventually I started offering one-on-one sessions. My whole business blueprint came into place. And now I'm receiving profit from a completely effortless standpoint because I was able to anchor in entirely to God first rather than profit first.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to be tested to see if we can keep our faith.
Yeah. And not everyone is going to get down to $0, you know, and it's like, but it's also like, I had this idea that like, oh, you hit $0, and it was like an unconscious association of like, well, that's when you're officially in a state of poverty, is when you hit $0. But it's like, no, that's not necessarily true. I still have a house over my head. I still have a car. I still have shelter. I still have food. I still have all of these things that are able to help me live. So I was able to see these perspectives of kind of the fear of when I had money of not wanting to go down to that place. But then once I didn't have money, oh man, the value that I found of $50, of $150, when you say respect, now I have respect for money, to whereas before I wasn't respecting it. I took it for
same
granted.
thing for me also, because I always had it. And so I didn't have a good relationship with money. I was, I don't know, I thought that I didn't value it actually. So it's only when it's been taken away from me, when I wasted it, that now I really appreciate now. I appreciate money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got a good both sides of the fence, because when I realized I needed to invest in myself, that's when I really started seeing the value of investing in spiritual stuff for my life. And I could feel my consciousness changing. So that's when I think the respect started. Whereas before I did that, it was like taking it for granted. And then I had to find the other side of respect of like, okay, how are you going to feel when you don't have that money? And so it was a nice little initiation I set up for myself.
Nice little lesson. So now let's talk about the current state of the world, and it's very interesting, and what's happened in the US with President Trump. Like for me, I'm always constantly talking about what's happening in the US. it makes people turn to me and be a bit surprised. Often they tell me, "But why do you always talk about the US?" But I know the outreach actually of this spider web, and it's the nest is has been there for me, and like for example, Europe right now, I see it as this very dark energy. All the countries in Europe are under control, actually, much more than in the US. Like in France, I can see it clearly that we are governed by people who are consciously trying to bring down the economy, trying to bring down the social structures. And I can see it in their action, in their words, but nobody can see it and they don't want to see it because it's too dark. But now, since the election, there's a good wind coming, a good pressure that is coming. Like, how do you feel about? Is there hope? Is there from President Trump? Is it, or is it also not fully positive? Is it not complete?
So it's very nuanced, and it's really like the understanding of like multiple timelines and realities kind of setting themselves up alongside each other. So a lot of times when we step into the new earth or the ascension space, we hear about like the bifurcation of timelines, which is the exactly what we've been talking about, the service to self and the service to others. To whereas it's actually moving into a trifurcation of timelines where we have service to self, then we have a neutral and unpolarized timeline in the middle, and then we have the new earth ascension timeline as service to others. So the ascension new earth timeline, the full positive polarization is inevitable. It's here and available for people already to anchor into. And so that's, I think, the hope, where the hope comes from, is that it's there. It's here. It's inevitable. And there's no stopping it. It's impossible to stop that reality. And so we're just in the point now where these realities are kind of moving alongside each other, where eventually they're going to be completely not separated, but completely divided. They're going to have a dimensional division between all of these timelines sometime in the next, 30 years or so, 30 to 40 years. And so what's happening right now with Trump is that he is helping set up the neutral and unpolarized timeline. So this neutral and unpolarized timeline is not really the space where people are choosing evil per se. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the service to self timeline is where people become aware of darkness, they become aware of evil, and they say, I want that. I'm going to choose that. Whereas the neutral and unpolarized timeline is more so like beings who just have their own interests in mind. They're not intentionally trying to really harm people. They are just wanting to set up the timeline that's best for their advantage. So then they're going to do things that end up harming people, that end up having a negative effect on people, but they're not necessarily looking at like Satanism and evil and saying like laughing, the evil.
Yeah.
Like
it's not intentional.
They're more in blinders per se.
But this can be dangerous also.
Yes. Oh, very, very much so. And so it's still because this middle and timeline is, you can think of it like the gray alien timeline. It's like the beings who remove emotion. They're removing emotion from themselves entirely. And they're just mental. They're just logic. This is Elon Musk. So this is the timeline that Elon Musk is currently setting up, and that he is a representative for. So him wanting to get to Mars, him wanting these chips, all of this stuff, it's all correlated to this neutral kind of gray agenda, this gray narrative that is kind of setting up this futuristic dystopia. To whereas, and this is what Trump is helping with, but Trump is polarized positively. It's hard for people to accept this sometimes. but he is very aware of every single thing that's going on. He's been communicating with ETs, with channeling for years, for 10 years. He's very aware of everything that's happening. And so he's actually a part of the light workers, a part of the star seeds. He's a very positive soul. And so because of the nature of the darkness that we're experiencing, the conflict, the battle that's happening, he's basically been playing like a cosmic secret agent. You think of like someone who is not a double agent, but someone who plays a part to get into certain environments, to learn about what's happening, and then to fuck it up, to take it the other way. And so he knows what's going on. And so like this whole, we'll use Project Stargate as an example. This whole thing that he just released that's about the AI, the mRNA vaccines, all of that. That agenda is a gray agenda. I mean, it's kind of a mix of service to self and neutral beings. They come together on agendas as well to try and put things in place. And so that is something that's been ready and in place to be put in publicly for, many years, for decades, even hundreds of years. These beings have known, these extraterrestrials, that they're setting this agenda up at this time frame. So they wanted to do it without Trump. They want like Elon Musk essentially to do it himself, and they wanted their team to do that. So Trump comes into office and then says, all right, you want to put this agenda into place? Let's do it. Let's fast track it now. We're doing it right now. So that messes up their timeline. That messes up their plan. That is the same thing he did with COVID. COVID was supposed to happen towards the end of Hillary Clinton's first term. So she was supposed to be in for 4 years. We were supposed to be hit with COVID, and then she was going to go into a second term, and that's where they were going to bring in this kind of like enslavement agenda more so. But Trump came into office, and then they had to implement COVID to try and go against him. So just his presence forced them to use their agenda at a different time than they wanted it to, and it created a whole disruption in the rhythm. And so that's essentially what he's doing right now. And so then the whole perception is to frame Trump to be this evil antichrist person who wants all of these agendas that he's just kind of popping into place. And he's pulling all these people in around him that he knows are service to self, that he knows aren't dedicated to him. He's just pulling them into the spotlight. There's karma that has to happen, and these people have to reckon with these things that they've done. And so he's just pulling them in. And so basically there is the kind of timelines of destruction and war that are going to happen. There is going to be war. There is going to be more battles. And there's going to be stuff that happens in the US too. There's probably going to be some little pockets of like kind of civil war going on in the United States. And so then next to that, that's where the ascension timeline is happening. That's where we are all tuned in and we're aligned with Earth. So we're being brought to places of protection. We're being brought to places of safety. We're still implementing our ascension timeline and our vibration throughout this whole process. So that's kind of like the friction of energy that's playing and tugging at itself back and forth. So then eventually that middle timeline is going to have that timeline of destruction is going to have somewhat of a fallout timeline where this is where the dimensional distinction is going to be strongly created. There's eventually going to be a timeline where people end up, that's kind of like an apocalyptic fallout per se. It's not world ending. It's more like Westworld type stuff, like the third season or fourth season of Westworld. And kind of like the show Fallout, that's depicting this timeline. And so that's what Elon Musk is setting up, and that's why the Cybertruck looks the way it does. And so that's for people who aren't, and souls who don't fully choose service to self and don't fully choose service to others. So they're going to get caught in between in this kind of timeline. Again, we say dangerous, but everything's all good in the grand scheme of things. It's all like, even if, and so like those souls are going to end up in that dimensional awareness, which is like the fourth, fifth dimension around there. And then the full ascension polarization is moving into our own dimensions of 5 through 7. And that's where we're then going to break off, and we're going to be in an entirely different dimension eventually. So it's inevitable that happens. Yeah.
And if I want to take part in it, because I feel this, my intuition is showing me that I do it by just working on myself.
Yep, that's it. Because we're our service is our vibration. Our service is the vibration we hold that then extends out into everywhere we are present. And so just by being more present, by healing more shadow, healing more trauma, finding more forgiveness, you're actually influencing that timeline. You're influencing the collective and making that more available for others to choose. And you're anchoring yourself more into this ascension timeline. And so I want to make it clear that this ascension timeline has like an entrance point and then a long kind of bandwidth of people who are in different vibrations. So you're not going to have to get to some crazy level of awareness to be given access to the ascension, to the full ascension timeline. You have to be anchored into love, anchored into forgiveness, and anchored into actual unity in that desire and in that devotion. And so there's like a gateway that we all come across, and then some will choose to extend into really, really high vibration really quickly, and others might stay back towards that original entrance point and live their life out down at that vibration. And so down and up, high and low, it doesn't mean better or worse then. It's just a vibration that we're expressing as. And so that's what the entrance point to ascension is. It's forgiveness and unconditional love. And it's not having all of these crazy complex concepts that we can understand and talk about. No, it's just anchoring into love. That's it.
Simple.
Yep.
Simple.
Yep.
And accessible to everyone.
Yep.
If you could speak to everyone right now, universal message on this planet right now, what would it be? If you can talk today.
I think it is, I got to roll with forgiveness. That is forgiveness of, and this is, so it's forgiveness of others is the highest form of self-compassion. That's what the message is that when you can get to that place, that means that you care that much about yourself, that you're willing to do that. And you have so much compassion to let go of resentment, to let go of hatred and division and separation, and actually say, I forgive you. You're allowed to exist. You're allowed to make choices. Doesn't mean I agree with them. Doesn't mean that I would allow you to make choices near me, but it means that I forgive you and I recognize you as a divine being. And so the aspect of forgiveness is going to lead us into being able to actually have conversations, because this is what we're heading into. We're heading into a collective forgiveness initiation. That's what's happening right now.
Okay.
And so everyone's going to have to face a sense of forgiveness, and that's going to be these choice points. That's going to be people recognizing that there's been pedophilia happening underneath their awareness, that there's been ritualistic things happening to force them to try and
do you think that those things will come up to the consciousness of everyone? It will come up?
Yeah, they have to. Yeah? So that's the singularity, essentially. When we think of singularity, we think of like AI merging with consciousness. No, that's a false singularity. That's the singularity of the service to self. And it is part of the singularity is those timelines kind of happening, but as the collective exists throughout all of this kind of unified experience that's happening, everything is going to get exposed. Everything is going to be made aware. And so that's where people are then going to choose where they kind of push themselves throughout that process. So the singularity is essentially a singularity of forgiveness, and then people choosing their timeline from that place of forgiveness.
And you can only forgive others if you love yourself, I guess.
Yep. Exactly.
It has to start from there. If you love yourself, then you're okay to forgive. This reminds me of the Tibetans who were, thrown out. And I remember one of the stories where what they were most afraid of is that they would be holding anger towards the Chinese. That's what they were the most scared of. And they didn't want that. Because they knew that it would bring like a seed of darkness. That would be the beginning, actually, of evil ripening into them.
Yeah.
So always feeling love, even towards the people who threw them out, who killed them, who took their country. They're working on that, and it's so inspiring.
That gives me chills.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, self-immolated also. I don't know if you say like that, yeah? Set themselves on fire.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
You know, the Tibetans, a lot of them were doing this as a sign of protest. Maybe it was another form of mind control from the Chinese. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? That can be that fire ritual. That's like, and so when we get to that level of kind of, again, here we go back to this spiritual battle. It's like that someone who chooses to protest like that, who lights themselves on fire, their higher self is actually rebalancing the fire element on a cosmic scale through that process. And the whole issue right now with the evil service to self is an imbalance in the fire element. Everything is about fire power. Everything is about burning, about intense light to create division and multiply everything into as many different individual things as one time. And so if that monk or that Tibetan person does that from a state of like intuition, they're rebalancing like a cosmic scale, and almost like, and it also depends on how they go out and how well seated they are in their foundation. Because if someone lights themselves on fire and then they're like, oh, it's going to create a bunch of karma. Yeah, but there are tons of people who do that, and they just, they sit there.
They're quiet.
They just don't even budge. And so that's like burning away this karma, any sense of that anger, any sense of that fire coming out and having a negative effect. That's like a cosmic rebalancing that person is doing by protesting like that.
And this reminds me of the fire in California. So do you think it's linked to that element also, like a purging, or is it like why? What is the reason of those fires? Is there a spiritual reason also of all these houses burning down in Hollywood? Or is it more to hide?
I think that all of the above, honestly.
Yeah, maybe
all of the above. Like I haven't gone too far into finding out about this on my own. Like it's definitely targeted. It was definitely on purpose.
Yeah.
And they've always been doing this though. Like the California has done this with wildfires in many different seasons. They always seem to have these wildfires in these specific seasons, and then they claim insurance, and then they get money, and then they have all these different things that they can do through those fires happening. And so it's like back in 2020, or around that time, I think Trump's first term, 2016 to 2020, there were all these fires happening, and it was the same thing. People were getting caught that were starting them. And so it's nothing new. They've been doing this. And I think it's they could be using this for their own fire ritual to purge to cover up the stuff that's happened in Hollywood, like all of these celebrities being connected. It's like it's like that could be their own fire ritual to kind of and this is what the CIA does too. I don't know if they do it anymore because of the nature of technology and internet and data, but when they used to have all printed papers and printed files, they had a burn mechanism. So when they needed to get rid of someone being connected to them, get rid of someone's file, they would have a burn ritual and burn all of the papers that got rid of all of this evidence. So where do we think that concept comes from? That's on an overarching scale. That's what's happening. And so now you have all of this attention on these celebrities. They're all selling their houses. They're all moving to these different places. And so it's like, it's all part to create just kind of a cover for them wanting to do these different things, and it's like, I'm pretty sure Leonardo DiCaprio hasn't been in the United States for months, and he's been he doesn't show his face in public, and he's in all these other countries. And it's like, even everything down to that, it's like, this is that exposure that's happening. And this is the inevitability where we're going to start seeing things like people like Leonardo DiCaprio could just all of a sudden commit suicide. It's like, oh, well, now he's dead. Why? There's not going to be an investigation into him. So it's just things like that. And so, all of the above, I think, on what you're saying, and that land is really connected with the fire element. It's most likely had experiences throughout eons of time where there has been fire used to harm the land, to harm the indigenous people that were there, all of that. And so it's really sorry about that. It's like a karmic representation of kind of that area throughout all of time.
And I'm so ready for these people to be exposed. Just thinking about children sometime right now is enough to, ignite that fire in me. And so I hope that we can move to a more positive timeline. And these people are exposed because we were worshiping actually false idols, like all these American movies and American TV show stars and all. And now, if you look back, you can realize that the person was negative. But at that time, we were just worshiping them. And
that false screen. It's like the glamour effect. And that goes all the way back to worshiping false gods in Greek mythology and Norse mythology. The fact that with chanting and ashrams, and it's like that has it's been turned into worshiping of the deity as it's outside of you. So not even recognizing that the deva is a part of you, and then worshiping whatever guru is a part of that ashram that's with that deity. So it's that whole effect that's creating that sense of glamour, and it's everywhere that we look. And the big place that's going to be revealed and exposed around this human trafficking, pedophilia stuff is the Indian ashram underbelly of that entire space. That's also being used similar to Hollywood glamour. And, we see Bollywood in India because Hollywood is being set up by the Russian elite families. They've been covering that the whole time. That's why Scientology is a big part of it. And then Bollywood is by the Indian elite Russian families. And so both of those families come from a specific oversoul line. And so they use that same process, the glamour effect, the worshiping of the guru, to hide it. It really creates a shield for that.
Yeah, and also when I went to India, when I started 2015, even at that time on TV, it was so much, I don't know, they would not show even a kiss in movies. You would not see too much flesh of women, and it would be very, polite and respectful. But now, just 10 years later, it's all about showing as much as you can, and in all the the music videos and all the actresses, and it's become, as if you go to Delhi, it's as bad as Hollywood in just a few years. The access to porn also. Like, what do you think of that? Of I don't know, the emergence of Pornhub and all these things. That are they sucking our energy through these things, or is it like a hungry machine? And then the power of guilt also of people who go on those websites, and politicians are not doing anything about it. Just give it, full access. But at the same time, they want to censor people who talk about, natural remedies, and it's like the whole world is upside down.
Yeah, it's the inversion, right? It's a complete inversion, and that porn is definitely created and used for that specific reason. It's because our sexual centers are our creative core. Our energy to create anything is coming through our sacral, through our root, and kind of up and out, like that, or down and out. And so it's like, if someone that is an energy harvesting mechanism. So if someone is tuning into porn without knowing what's happening, then they're having energy siphoned from them. And so when I used to watch porn, when I was waking up, I was in the spiritual space, and I could see that I had a dependence on it. I wasn't addicted to it or anything like that, but I had a dependence on it. And so what I started doing was actually just setting intention with it and treating it like a ceremony, ritual type of process. Like, if you're going to do tantric stuff with yourself, then I would set that intention and do that as I was experiencing the porn, and it eventually lessened that dependence. So it's like, you can still, I don't think it's like, ideally you want to get to a space where you're completely fulfilled in sexual energy. You can just tune into it whenever you need to be tuned into it and remove that dependence. But if anyone's listening that does have that dependence, it's the same thing as any other type of dependence or habit. It's like, just be present with it. Just be present with the habit. Treat it like this is the whole Buddhist process of
be aware of it.
Addiction. And it's just becomes a meditation, and then you become,
it's like, keep a mirror here so you can see yourself.
Exactly.
It's like, what I tell people is when somebody is having an argument and they are full on anger, the last thing they want is for you to bring a mirror and they can see their reflection in the mirror. And also, when you have anxiety, what you want to do, normally people, they want to run away from anxiety or suppress it and not feel it, do anything so that I don't feel anxiety. But what you should do is to feel it fully, to go through it fully.
Yes.
So I guess if you do something like watching porn and you don't want to, because sometimes people don't want to, but they still do it, you should still feel all of it before, during, afterwards, the guilt. All of this would lessen the grip of it.
Exactly. And love it. Love yourself when you're done.
It's just an experience.
Because it turned into, the guilt afterwards. It's like, oh my God, I did that again. Like, like the judgment. And so it's just and I made a video about this the other day, like, what we're seeking isn't like avoidance of the thing. It's going into the thing, so then we can love ourselves through it and see that we're still going to be safe. We're still going to be loved and forgiven throughout the entire thing. Because really what we're scared of is like, we're not going to be forgiven. We go do a public speech and we get all caught up in the throat and freeze and paralyze. Like,
I know that feeling.
Someone like then being scared of that and thinking like, well, how do I fix that? Like, how do I get through that? It's like, you go through it,
There's no other way, no?
and you feel it, and then you forgive yourself and you love it. And then you're going to feel much less pressure next time. And so it's the same thing with all of that. You just got to go head on into it and hold it with forgiveness. And when you can hold that unconditional forgiveness, you're then not going to hold on to the things that are coming through, and it's just going to move through you much easier.
Yeah. I've been also doing something you've said lately, is trying to pull my energy back in, because my energy was, and is my energy also in my past? Because like when you said those things, I was also trying to pull my energy from past experiences. Mm-hmm. And just that feeling of trying to pull back my energy within myself is pleasant also.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You're definitely pulling it back. Yeah. And it's like, because in reality, the field of time is simultaneous. So the version
everything is happening together.
Yeah, it's all happening in one dance together. We just have a perception of past, present, and future. And so it's like that's one of the biggest tools that I use currently, is pulling my energy back in. And that's allowed me to not have to depend on really long meditations to rebalance myself anymore throughout my days. And I still meditate, but it's less dependence on that being my thing that balances me. And so it's like every morning when I wake up, I pull my energy back into my physical body. Every night before bed, I unplug. You can use the concept of unplugging like a cord. I unplug from the technology matrix. I unplug from the Instagram matrix, all of that. Nice. And so also with any previous experiences, with any people, anything like that. And so I think I wish I would have known that when I was first getting started in the awakening journey, because it's huge. We don't even think about it. And the moment you start doing it, like you're saying, it's pleasant. You feel more full, you feel more balanced. And so I think that's one of the most important things to do.
Wow, that's really amazing. And I think we're going to have to meet again.
Yeah, man. This is fun. Fun conversation. I loved it.
And I've noticed that you have a friend also. I don't know her name, but you've been doing videos. Is that your partner?
Yeah, that's my partner. That's Deborah.
And she's also into this, right?
Yeah. She does a lot of stuff with dragons, like dragon work, if you've ever heard of that, working with the metaphysical dragons. And she does she does basically the same stuff as me. She does a lot of Akashic records, hypnosis. She's really good with hypnosis. I mean, she's really good with every single thing. But for anyone that's listening that wants to check her out, her Akashic records readings are the most detailed readings I've ever experienced with Akashic records. She can go in and pull out, it's like she tells you a movie about your lives, and it's so incredibly detailed. And so for anyone that wants to check her out, her Instagram is Lemaire Soulcrafts, spelled LemairSoulCrafts. And you can also check her out on my Instagram. We do a lot of videos together. We have a lot of healing services together. We do twin flame karmic union containers to heal karmic relationships, understand soul contracts. We have like a dragon codex container that we're doing together. And then we have an upcoming live stream on February 14th. That's about Melchizedek and the Essenes. So we're going into the breakdown of those families. Basically, Jesus, his family was the Essenes, and the Essenes comes from Melchizedek, which is all connected to these other lives and Akashic experiences and the religious manipulation and religious wars. It's basically the core of the battle that we're in. And so we're going to be breaking down events and cosmic memory. We're going to be channeling Yeshua, Anna, Yeshua's grandmother, Mother Mary, Joseph.
Mother Mary.
And so that's on February 14th. That link is in my Instagram bio. And then we also are doing a channeling course. That's a 5-week channeling course that is teaching our practice of channeling embodiment. So the way that we've gotten to this space, we're going to be going into that for 5 whole weeks with different modules, a group container. And so you can also find that at the link in my bio as well.
So we'll also add your details anyway in the video, and maybe we can organize an interview with your partner and my wife together, because I'm sure it would be very nice also to see her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right.
Well, thank you very much. Out, dude. It was a pleasure. I love this conversation, and
same.
Let's definitely stay in touch. We'll do another one whenever it feels right.
Yeah. Take care of yourself, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Sounds good, brother. You too.